Welcome back. All right, so I want to talk about money today. I want to talk about money today because a lot of people have been talking about money since Leon Draisaitl signed his extension, which comes in at a $14 million cap hit. So I'm looking at salary, just money, just salary, not the cap hit. The cap hit's something we get hung up on. The reality is that the cap hit is only part of the story. The salary kind of gets hidden by the cap hit. There are players on the board that I think might surprise some people as to how much money they're going to make this year or next year, and the fact that McDavid isn't on the list. I even was like halfway through this video and I'm like, why isn't McDavid on the list? So I had to get into McDavid's contract and look at it and see why. Now, this is including both signing bonuses and salaries because I don't care how they get their money. It's how much money they're going to make over a calendar year, right? So from July the 1st until, well, the end of the regular season, that's where your last paycheck comes in if you're an NHL player. So the top paid player this year in the National Hockey League is Austin Matthews, $16.7 million. So $16,700,000 this season for Matthews, the highest paid player over the next two seasons, including Draisaitl on his new contract. So Austin Matthews, you can justify that contract with his Hart Trophy, the Lindsay Trophy. He has three Rocket Richard trophies, and of course he won the Calder in his rookie season. Austin Matthews, the one knock on him, of course, is playoffs. Now it's all the Leafs are going to be tarnished with that, but the reality is Matthews might be the most gifted goal scorer. I'll say one of the top gifted goal scorers in the league's history. I think with the 69 goal season this past year, that shouldn't be that controversial to say. But yeah, he is the top paid guy in the NHL this year. Nathan MacKinnon second, $16,500,000. Now MacKinnon has the Hart Trophy, the Lindsay, the Calder, and he won the Stanley Cup in 2022. And a lot of fans, and I think media in some level too, believe that, hey, winning the cup should be worth an X amount of dollars. What's interesting is it feels like the Stanley Cup sort of has this knock on effect to the entire team. And so, yes, MacKinnon makes some good money here. Winning the Stanley Cup helps, but it really seems to inflate the salaries of other players on the team kind of more than the star players. Pettersson in Vancouver is the number three paid player, $14.5 million for him. He won the Calder Trophy as well, so that's three Calder Trophy winners in a row there who are at the top of the list. So Bedard, here you go. But yeah, Pettersson, obviously the Canucks looking for a bounce back season from him. I think one of the reasons why they were happy to sign that contract with Pettersson is I don't think they envision that outside of Hughes and hopefully Demko's going to have to play a bunch and play well to demand a $10 million cap hit. But there aren't that many Vancouver Canucks right now that you can see making a ton of extra money over where they are right now. So while I kind of wish that Pettersson's contract might be a little bit lower, I think he can bounce back this year. I have faith in that. William Nylander, $13.5 million he's going to make this season. So again, it's interesting to see how many of these are well above their cap hit, and we'll get into the cap hits on this side of the board. Jake Guentzel got paid handsomely up front by the Tampa Bay Lightning. It is a very specific number, and I love when it's this specific. $13,263,157. Of course, he won a Stanley Cup in Pittsburgh. He wants to win one in Tampa as well. So Guentzel's the number five paid player in the National Hockey League this year. David Pastrnak, $13 million. He's tied with Rasmus Dahlin in terms of the money. Pastrnak won a Richard Trophy, and Dahlin may very well win a Norris at some point soon. I think he has the talent, the ability, and the numbers. It's just a matter of when, I think, with Rasmus Dahlin. Dougie Hamilton, $12,600,000 for Hamilton this year. So very well paid this season. And yeah, it should be great for him being back, being healthy, and getting $12.6 million. That would motivate me to be healthy too. Alex Pietrangelo, $12.5 million for him. He won Stanley Cups in 2019 and 2023. And a rich season like that helps, right? And then Seth Jones, $12.5 million for Seth Jones with Chicago. And what makes it interesting is we always talk about the cap hit. It's not fair these guys get paid more than McDavid. How can this guy get a cap hit higher? McDavid, in terms of straight money, has $10 million coming to him this year and next year. Majority of that is bonus money, I do believe. But yeah, it's $10 million this season and next. He does not qualify for either side of this board, but he will once we get to 2026, 2027. McDavid's going to get paid a lot of money, and he's going to be worth it. So I wanted to use this column here to set up this column here. And also, right in the middle here, you'll notice Mitch Marner's name on the board because he's a free agent this coming summer. And with the 415 points he's put up from 2019, 2020 until now, he is one of the top performers in the National Hockey League points-wise. And these players get paid for points and goals. So as much as we talk about defensive forwards and defensive defensemen and how important that is, and definitely defensive forwards and defensive defensemen get paid better than what they used to, general managers basically will still pay for goals and points. That is essentially what you're looking at here. You don't want a guy who's just offense, but in Draisaitl's case, he has 538 points. The only player who scored more than he has since 2019-2020 is the aforementioned Austin Matthews, Connor McDavid. Matthews we'll be talking about in a minute here. So Draisaitl is the highest paid player next year at $16.5 million. $200,000 less than Austin Matthews is making this year. Now, the cap hit for Draisaitl's $14 million, meaning that his $16.5 million is going to get dragged down by years at the end. I really think that when we look at the cap hits and we get into the weeds, I sometimes think some general managers are just better at structuring contracts. They are better at structuring them so that they dive on the back end, but not in a way that breaks the NHL's rules or make them look really bad, but they're better at structuring the contracts. If you look at the year-to-year pay, these guys are very well compensated. And the years where their money drops, very often will be years where their career is expected to be winding down anyways. Now, for McKinnon, now I want to stay with Draisaitl too. He has an Art Ross, a Lindsay, and a Hart, and I don't think he's done winning hardware. That being said, the fact that he plays on the same team as McDavid might be difficult since he's almost always going to be seen as the second best player on his team. So that's going to make it more difficult to win hardware. The Evgeny Malkin situation, right? So McKinnon has 497 points from 2019-2020 until now. So almost 500 points for McKinnon. $16,050,000 he's going to make next year. So he's a drop of $450,000 from this season. But his cap hit's $12.6 million. So again, we get caught up on the cap hit, but the actual money doesn't match. Austin Matthews has a drop of $1.5 million to $15.2 million next year. Again, his cap hit's $13.25 million. Pettersson's money stays the same, $14.5 million, but his cap hit's $11.6 million. So again, front-loaded contracts are the way of the game. Nylander, $13.5 million again, so that stays the same. His cap hit's $11.5 million. Pasternak's pay drops a little bit, down to $12.5 million. His cap hits $11.25 million. Braden Point, $12 million. His cap hit is $9.5 million. So this is a very expensive year on his contract. He got Stanley Cups in 2020 and 2021. I think Braden Point's shown that he's worth every penny they're paying on him. But if you look at the point totals as well, Matthews 444 points over this time. Pettersson 346 points. Nylander 366 points. Pastrnak 443 points. And Point with 355 points. Now, Rasmus Dahlin's on the board again, but $12 million, a drop of $1 million from where he's at this year, and his cap hits $11 million. His points 248, but he's a defenseman, and I don't think we expect Dahlin to end up scoring the same amount of points as Braden Point, Nylander, or anybody like that. But still, I had to put that on the board. Sebastian Aho is in the top 10 next year. Makes $12 million. 360 points for him since 2019-2020. His cap hit, $9,750,000. So people would look at that cap hit and say, see, Carolina knows how to keep that cap hit down. Right. But his actual pay is pretty high, $12 million. I'm not going to say he's not worth it. I think he is. I think that's great that he can do that. And then you got Sasha Barkov is in the top 10. 366 points, again, back to 2019-2020. Barkov's straight cash salary next year, $11,600,000. Now that's a combination of, signing bonuses and your actual, salary every 2 weeks. But Barkov's paid pretty darn well. Now he has a Lady Byng trophy. He won the Stanley Cup this year, and he has 2 Selke awards. His cap hit is $10 million. So the cap hit only tells you part of the story. My argument is a simple one, really. I think Draisaitl, for the amount of points he puts up, for what he's done over the last 5 years, I think he's worth being the highest paid player in the National Hockey League until McDavid's contract is up. Where it gets tricky for Edmonton is if you have the 2 highest paid players in the National Hockey League, you are leaving yourself in a difficult position to round out the rest of your roster. But the counter argument is a simple one. There are players who will take less money to play with the best players in the game. We've seen that with Crosby. We've seen that with Ovechkin. And I think we're going to see that with McDavid and Draisaitl as well. But will it be enough of a discount that other players will give the team to have a chance to play with McDavid and Draisaitl where it will offset the amount of money that McDavid and Draisaitl make? Because the question I have here is a simple one too. If Draisaitl is a $14 million cap hit and his cash is $16.5 million in the first year of that contract, I would think McDavid has to be what, $18 million the first year of that contract? His cap hit has to be $15 million or higher, right? So it does get difficult because if you're putting $29 million into 2 players, even with a cap that's going up, next year it's supposed to go up to what, 92 million, 92.5 million, something crazy like that. And we're going to be knocking on the door of $100 million in the salary cap should it keep rising. That's the plan. But still, if you're putting that much money in 2 players, it does get more and more difficult to round out the team. But it's kind of a nice problem to have because as long as you have Draisaitl and McDavid in their prime, you should be in good shape going forward as a playoff team and potentially as a contender as well. Of course, depth decides who wins the cup very often. So does good health, to be honest. Very often when I'm looking at Stanley Cup champions and doing videos on that kind of thing, it is notable that a lot of the key players will play most of, if not all, the games in those playoff runs. But I'd be interested to know your thoughts on this. The Leon Draisaitl extension is pricey, but again, when you look at the overall salaries and the money paid out to these players, I think it makes some sense. I do understand why people are somewhat alarmed at the amount of money, and I also understand why people look at McKinnon's cap hit and they look at Draisaitl's and say, are you serious? But McKinnon this year is making $16.5 million. Draisaitl's making $16.5 million next year. The money's the same. So McKinnon only makes $450,000 less next year. So it's not a huge difference from that perspective. For any of us, $450,000 US is a huge difference. Absolutely. If I had that amount of money, then I could buy a house. But it's not going to happen. At any rate, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. And another question I'd throw in there is, so Marner's contract's up this summer. Does he end up in the top 10? Does he bump Barkov out? Because that's the tricky part, is that with the salary cap going up, my guess is he probably does. And if he's going to want, that huge cap hit, doesn't make any sense for Toronto to give that to him. So there's a question for you. Let me know your thoughts. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Thank you guys so much for all your support as always. I will talk to you again